Hey everyone, Julia Usher here live from my basement test kitchen in St. Louis, Missouri on what is a gorgeous fall morning. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to appreciate it outside today, but I will certainly do that from my window next to me. Welcome to what is the last of our live Q&As for my cookie art competition, also known as Julia M. Usher's Cookie Art Competition. We will be talking about the judging process and how it's structured to make it as fair and educational as possible. Today we'll also be taking questions across the board about anything related to the competition. Before we do that though, I wanted to say a few words about the competition itself. It is online this year, which is great because that means it's open to cookiers across the globe. It always has been, but it's always taking place in a physical cake show, which limits people's ability to get there. This year we're hoping for a great response since we don't have the restrictions of having to travel with entries and so on and so forth. So that's the question I often get is who can enter, and it's anyone of any skill level and any age. We are well within the competition judging schedule, if you will. Registration opened on July 12th. Entries are due on October 15th at 5 p.m. Central Time. So many of you may already be in the throes of making your pieces. If you're not and you're just hearing about this competition for the first time, there's still time to enter, so we encourage you to do so. Prizes this year we'll talk about a little bit more at the end, but they are substantial. So there's lots of financial incentive as well as educational incentive to get involved. I'm just pausing here to open up my comments because they shut down a little bit. We'll be getting to those in a second. So that's a little bit about schedule. As far as when we're announcing finalists, I'm targeting November 15th. That's unclear until we know how many entries we have and how long the judging process is going to take. We take the judging process extremely seriously at my competition, as you'll hear today, so we want to make sure we have ample time to do that. And usually I evaluate that schedule once I know the numbers that we're dealing with. I'm going to move on and talk about the judges before we talk about the judging process. We've got a panel of 4 expert judges. I'm thrilled to have them on board. Many have been with me for many, many years. Laura Saporiti from Italy is a new judge this year, added to round out the judging pool because I cannot judge this year. One aspect of our judging process is we judge blind. No judge knows whose entry is whose, so that there's no personal bias introduced into the process. And because I'm administering the competition and seeing every entry come in, I needed to replace myself with someone, and Laura was that replacement. We met her a couple of lives ago, and she's absolutely wonderful. I did want to pause here a bit and talk a little bit about how I choose my judges. It's not at all random. It's very, very decisive. I primarily choose on the basis of expertise. One of the primary goals of my competition is to give feedback and to help people grow their cookie decorating skills. And it's really hard to give feedback if the judges aren't expert in skills themselves, if they don't know what makes them work well and what makes them not work so well. So I have chosen judges who demonstrate a high level of expertise in a number of skill areas. Sandy Beltran's our resident painter, Stephanie Capel. If you want to see clean piping work, clean, beautiful piping work, hers is the piping work to look at. She's also an expert in lettering. Laura Saporiti, piping, pressure piping, and painting are her fortes. And Ginny Levack, who you'll meet today, is our resident airbrushing and stenciling expert. More about Ginny in a second. The other criteria that I use to choose judges is that they have the stamina, the endurance, if you will, to judge every entry like it's the first one they've looked at. We often get upwards of 80 entries, so it's very important that their eyes are sharp, their minds are clear as they're judging that 80th entry, just as clear as when they judge the first, because we want everyone to get valuable feedback and to feel like they were treated equitably. And then lastly, all of my judges have extensive judging and competing experience, be it in online competitions or in-person competitions. Each year I do tweak the judging process to optimize it, and each of these judges each year brings their best practices from other competitions they've judged to the table to help improve our process, and I'm extremely grateful for that. So those are the criteria I use, and I'm super grateful to have these women on board. They've been helping me throughout this process since it started even prior to July. So, without further ado, we're meeting Judge Ginny Levack of Creative Cookier fame today. Ginny, as many of you know, is the inventor of the groundbreaking, game-changing Stencil Genie and many other innovative products for stenciling and airbrushing. So I can't think of anyone better suited to tell anyone what goes into making a beautiful, clean, gorgeous airbrush and stenciled cookie than Ginny Levack. So that's her area of expertise. She's also been one of my most long-standing judges, so she knows my process inside and out. She's worked with me since my competition was back at the Oklahoma State Sugar Art Show. I also know her to be one of the most thorough and thoughtful judges around. Back to that point about stamina and endurance, this woman never lets up. She writes feedback well into the night if it needs to be written, and she's absolutely someone I can always rely on. So, without further ado, let me reveal Ginny. Welcome, Ginny. You're now on screen. I'm going to ask you to say a few more things about your business. You've actually gone through many changes this year with the business, so I'd love to hear about those, and also your judging and competing experience.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know me, I've been in the cookie community for over 11 years, and first as a cookier, like so many of you, and then the last 8 or so years teaching cookie and airbrush classes, and creating, inventing, developing new products for all of the cookiers to help make your lives a little bit easier. Hi, everybody. I see y'all's comments. I did invent the Stencil Genie. I also, maybe some of you know us from our meringue powder. We seem to have a crazy cult following with that. And then there's our cookie rehab retreats and the cookie cruises. So I stay busy in the cookie world, but I am so looking forward to being part of this event Julia's sponsoring and putting on. It is just so exciting to see it go online with everything that's been happening. I wasn't sure we were going to be able to have a competition this year, so I'm really glad that we have that opportunity. And I feel like my successes and my failures as a cookier and a product developer do give me a unique perspective when I'm reviewing your entries. And being a judge is an honor that I take very seriously, super seriously. And I feel like if you're going to pour your heart and soul into a project, that it's my responsibility to put my heart and soul into judging it fairly and objectively.
Thanks, Ginny. And you do. I appreciate that more than you know. So anyway, I thank you for being here today. As I said, everyone, we're talking about the judging process primarily, but other questions are fair game. I'm seeing comments now. If I'm looking sideways, that's why. Before
Me too.
We have some planned things that we want to talk about, Ginny and I do. But first, I want to see if you guys have any questions. You can interrupt with questions at any time, and we will take them at any time, because your questions are probably, more important than what we have planned to tell you. But I don't see any, so I'm going to move forward, if that's all right with everybody, to the first planned thing that Ginny and I wanted to talk about, which is what sets an entry apart. We do have pre-established judging criteria in this competition, anywhere from 6 to 10 criteria depending on the category, be it 2D or 3D cookies. And every entry gets evaluated on a scale of 1 to 10 across each of these criteria to come up with a total score. Each judge evaluates independently, and then it rolls up into a total score. There's more to the process than that, which we'll talk about later. So we judge consistently, coherently, and as systematically as possible. But that being said, there are definitely things that set an entry apart and might cause it to stand out from others. So if you're preparing an entry, listen up, guys. This is kind of an important section. Ginny, I'm going to turn this to you and ask you, as you're judging, of course, you're looking at all those criteria, but, what else really makes an entry stand out?
So for me, when I'm looking at entries, what I love to see is somebody who you can tell has pushed the envelope and done something new. a new technique that maybe we haven't even seen before. That's what just excites me, is to see these new things that some of you come up with, and even just new ways of doing things that some of us might not have thought of in the past. So seeing the new innovation is so exciting to me when I'm judging. Also, clean work sets it apart. So sometimes when you're working on your project, I say stop and take a picture and look at that picture instead of your piece, because a lot of times when you look at that still picture, some things will pop out at you and you can address those before you get any further along in the process.
It's interesting you say that, because when I create pieces, even if it's just for a course I'm teaching or something I'm throwing online, I always ultimately take a picture of it, right? But I'm always taking pictures of it throughout the process. That's how I gauge how it's coming together, and that's when I make mid-course adjustments. That's particularly important, I think, in this year's competition, because you all will be submitting photographs. So to optimize that end photograph, I would say this is an awesome tip. And it does give you that holistic view, which is really important, especially for the 3D category. Yes. For anything else to add to that, Ginny?
I guess one of the other things that will help set your entry apart is when you are taking these pictures, be sure you're taking good, clean pictures. We get so focused on the project, and like when you're selling cookies, you see this, you've created this beautiful set, and then it goes out the door and you went, oh gosh, I didn't take a picture. But not only do you need the pictures to enter here, they need to be clean, crisp, great pictures. So really focus on getting a good shot when you're working on your pictures.
Yeah, I'll teach you a little bit about marketing and packaging your product for delivery. I will add one thing to that we do not want staged or produced backgrounds on these photos. We want them on a solid background, so that the cookie piece really stands out, because our judges need to view it. They're not going to be grading you on your accessories that surround it. So clean, white, black, or any complementary color, but no patterning, no staging, no accessories. That way we can really focus on it and see all your great details. For me, if I can interject, what I think sets an entry apart, I agree with absolutely everything Ginny said. I also look for people that think creatively, not only with respect to the techniques, but also with respect to the storyline they create around their entry. I'd love to see a piece that takes the theme and really personalizes it. I don't love to see entries where I could take it and put it in any other competition and it might fit that theme as well. I mean, we really like to see you in your entry, and that will set it apart. Of course, really nice execution of skills, mastery of the skills you use is also of paramount importance. Any questions, guys, about what we look for? Again, there's 6 to 10 different criteria. They are listed on the Cookie Connection site in the competition overview post there, and I will have that link underneath this video once it permanently posts to my Facebook page. I don't have the ability to put the links in beforehand with the program I'm using, but it will be there and you can review that. They're slightly more for the 3D category because we also require that it view well from all angles. But basically they relate to number of techniques used, mastery of techniques used, interpretation of theme, cleanliness of the work, and so on and so forth. And all of those criteria are systematically judged by the judges independently. They don't talk as they're judging initially. We do that on purpose so that every judge's voice gets heard in the final tally. I've judged some competitions where it's exclusively a group effort, and sometimes the loudest judge has the most influence, and we don't really want that. So they will be individually scored. A total score will be tallied. That doesn't necessarily determine the winner because it's a 2-step judging process. At the end, the judges will get together. They will evaluate the top entries and finalists, If there are differences of opinion, which often there are, we'll hash it out. One judge might see something that another judge didn't see. We'll hash it out. We'll discuss any close calls, and we might tweak points accordingly to come to the final tally. So there is definitely a human element in this as well, so that nothing is overlooked. Okay, we're going to also talk a little bit about kind of pitfalls to avoid when entering. And I'm going to start with Ginny on that.
One thing that I just thought of was when you're taking your pictures, this is something to avoid. Anything in that picture that could identify who you are.
Thank you. Yeah.
I have seen entries in the past where somebody accidentally left something with their email address on it in a picture. First of all, we do want your pictures to just be on a solid background, but do be sure that you aren't showing a part of your house or living space, anything that could identify you, because we want to judge you fairly. We don't want to know whose piece is whose until it's all said and done and we find out who our winners are.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. So yeah, don't drop a business card in the photo, nothing like that. Don't talk about your piece on, you can talk about that you're working on the competition online. People are doing that right now. But don't show your work online too, because our judges are active online and they may see it. So we're trying to, again, make sure that we don't know whose is whose, because that just eliminates any form of, or minimizes any form of personal bias that might be introduced into any judging process. So thank you, Ginny, for that. So other pitfalls that entrants sometimes fall into that you want to talk about? Anything more?
Be sure you're following the rules that the products that you're using do fall into the acceptable items. Don't add things in there that aren't edible, things like that.
Okay, we do have a question, so I'm going to interrupt you for a sec, Ginny.
Perfect.
Petra asked, could all be impressed and created on one big cookie, or must be one set of cookies? Can it be gingerbread or other type of dough? I'm going to answer the last part first. As far as type of dough, it can be any type of cookie dough. Whether you can do one big cookie or a set, again, go back to the rules. They're on the cookie competition overview page on Cookie Connection, and they do vary by category. For the 2D category, I'm pulling them out here so I don't misspeak. In the 2D category, these are flat cookies, generally that are laying on a surface. They can be standing upright, but they are not constructed 3D pieces. It can be a single large flat cookie or a collection of flat decorated cookie. There's no maximum cookie count. However, we do have a space constraint for the entry. They all must fit into a 3 by 3 foot or 91 by 91 centimeter space. And we have these rules, guys, not to be punitive, not because we're going to disqualify you necessarily if you don't have them, but so that we create a level playing field so everybody is judged from against a consistent set of standards, again, trying to contribute to the fairness and equity of the process. If you don't follow a rule, typically we will deduct points in such a manner that your entry probably won't place. Those point deducts are determined in advance, and they're applied consistently across entries. So if a bunch of people don't follow the size constraint, you'll all get deducted X many points. Again, trying to make the process as fair as possible. The last thing we want people to do is feel like their entry was mishandled, especially when the stakes are pretty high. We've got a lot of prize money in this competition, and we want to make sure that it goes to the people that most deserve it. Okay, so I think that answers that question. Ginny, you were talking about rules, and I think I added to that again. They're not there to be punitive, like to slap hands or anything, and they're there so that we as judges know what we're looking for, and also so that people feel like they're judged consistently and fairly.
Right. I think the consistency in judging is key, and without us having rules, it would just be, as I say, willy-nilly, and we would never be able to fairly judge you. So do take a look at the rules and look at them again while you're working on your project, because sometimes we forget something and then we get to the end and we don't want to deduct anything if we don't have to. But we do have to have a guideline to keep it fair.
One other thing that I see, we do love entries that demonstrate mastery of a number of techniques, but we don't love entries that throw in a bunch of techniques just to put them in. So sometimes an entry can be overdone because people are trying to show us everything they can do. So this gets back to Ginny's earlier point of like taking a photograph and stepping back and looking at your entry. We would prefer an entry that does fewer skills better, I would say. Is that true, Ginny? Than like a bunch not so well.
Yeah, sometimes you really have to go with that less is more.
Hey, Bev. So get that stepping back, evaluating the entry, looking at it from all angles, saying, hey, where can I edit? Do I need to edit? That's an important step of the design process. I do that all of the time. And I would say that's particularly important on 3D pieces. The tendency there is to over-decorate each component of a 3D piece just to show you can do something. I do that. And then more often than not, I'm like, whoa, let me just simplify that section because it's really competing with another section of the piece. So we do have a question coming in from Martha. Hey, Martha, may I display my cookies with a plastic holder or do I need to use an edible holder? If you're using a 2D, are you talking about the 2D category, Martha? I'm assuming you are. I think I'm okay with them being displayed in the holder as long as it's minimal if you're wanting to show them upright. We're just going to be looking at the cookies, though, so keep that holder minimal. I got a question that's kind of unrelated to the competition. Hi, Julia. How long can we store fresh egg royal icing, and can we freeze it? I will address that later, but yes, you can freeze it, and I like to make my icing, I'm addressing it now. I like to make my icing, color it, and use it the day I make it because I find the color sets more stably. Other people do other things. There are many ways to do the same thing with decorating, but that's my personal preference. So Martha, we answered your question. Anybody else have questions about things we particularly get turned on by and things that we might say, hey, wish you hadn't done that? Okay. Anything to add?
No questions.
I know, no questions.
Don't be shy. Ask us questions.
I know.
Ask us anything.
This is our last competition live, guys. So this is your opportunity to hear from us directly. You can always leave messages on the Cookie Connection site, but oftentimes just hearing it from a judge or from me, the administrator of the competition, is going to give you a little more clarity. Ginny, you were going to say something, and I interrupted again.
I was just going to jump back to Martha. I think it was Martha's question about the holders. Mm-hmm. They do sell some little clear plastic ones that you can get, I think, on Amazon or something, which would be the least obtrusive because you don't want us to get distracted. And sometimes people buy little stands that kind of have ornate stuff on them. And more than often than not, that's going to take away from the overall look. So just try and use something that's extremely basic. Yeah, I agree. So Bev here. Hi, Bev. She asked, what is a bad idea for a show piece? Are you meaning a 3D piece, Bev? I'm assuming so. A bad idea. Ginny, do you want to tackle that one? A bad idea would be, like I say, I want everybody to push the envelope. But a bad idea would be to push the envelope to the point that as you're taking those pictures, your structure collapses. Don't go so far outside your box that you don't have the structural integrity that you need on a 3D piece.
Okay, so Bev was asking about both 2D and 3D. She said, okay, what you wouldn't want to see on a 2D piece, i.e. not standing up as one. Actually, not standing up is I could care less whether the cookies are up or down for 2D. Right. What we're looking for is we're looking at the detail on the cookie tops and how the set works with the theme and as a group. If it is a group. Some people may be submitting one big cookie. So on 2D, if there's one thing we wouldn't want, I'd say, I think I mentioned this before, theme-wise, I don't enjoy seeing sets that could look like they were made for something else. Maybe they weren't, but they look like they were made for something else and just plunked into our cookie competition. The sets have to be uniquely made for the competition, and so the theme statement should be pretty unique. And again, I don't love to see tons of techniques that may not work together well in the set or which aren't well executed. The flip side is I'd like to see exactly the opposite. Ginny, do you want to add to that for 2D, and then we'll tackle the 3D one? It's a little bit different.
Yeah, on the 2D, sometimes we do see people enter things that look a little more like they should have ended up in 3D. So do make sure that your entry matches up to the category that you're entering. That's important. And also, if you're doing multiple cookies, again, take a look at them and make sure that all of these things, one of these things is not like the other, is not what you want. You want a set that goes together well. If there's one piece that's looking like the odd man out, then he may just need to go away.
Right. You said something and I was going to build on it, and now it slipped my mind. Darn, what that was, because it was a good point. Anyway, we'll come back to it. 3D, anything that you wouldn't want to see on a 3D piece, Ginny? Oh, it was related to the category definitions. Remind me about that, and I'll come back to that.
Okay, why don't you just go ahead and do that so we don't forget.
Okay, so Ginny made a point about making sure you know what category your piece fits in. That's really important. I will not be recategorizing entries this year if it ends up in the wrong spot. So if it does end up in the wrong spot, it probably won't get judged. The category definitions are all on the Cookie Connection site under the competition overview. I'm going to read them again just so that everybody's clear. And I'm reading again from the actual notes that are on the site, so we're as consistent as possible. In previous lives, you might want to check those out too. They're also in the Julia Usher competition area of my blog on the site. We've done past lives with Laura Saporiti and myself where we've talked about what is a 3D cookie and what isn't. The general cookie world has one notion of that. For my competition, it's very specific, so you want to be sure you understand that. So, 2D cookie definition. It can be a single large flat decorated cookie or a collection of flat decorated cookies. No maximum cookie count. Arranged laying down artistically and also minimally overlapping so the decorative details on each cookie can be seen. By flat, we mean the cookies themselves must be flat. They can be decorated with icing and other media to create added dimensions, so they can have things that lift off of them. Some competitions don't allow the icing to rise above the surface of the cookie more than a certain amount. I don't care about that. The icing can rise above the cookie if you want. The entire entry must fit into a 3x3 foot area. The entry can be smaller, but it can't be bigger, minimal photo styling, etc. A 2D cookie is one that's not constructed. It's not a multiple cookie composition. A 3D cookie, however, is a multi-cookie construction, meaning it has many cookies in it to make up a bigger cookie or a bigger set of cookies. The cookies are arranged in any orientation and pieced together to create a freestanding dimensional piece of cookie art. We require a minimum of 12 individual cookies to comprise the construction. Those cookies don't need to be flat. They could be curved, they could be textured, they could be just about anything. The entire entry must fit into a 2 by 2 by 3 foot tall, 61 by 61 by 91 centimeter tall area. It can be smaller than this area, but it cannot be larger. So again, in some of those previous lives, I showed pictures like this may look dimensional, but it's really a 2D cookie, and that would be a flat cookie that has a lot of fondant or royal icing pieces sticking off of it. A three-dimensional piece would have multiple cookie parts stuck together in some way, and those pieces do not need to necessarily be flat. Bev said, I'm concerned with my royal icing embellishments on my 2D. Oops, Bev has a lot of questions, so let's go back. She said, can we use 3D-ish elements on the 2D entry, i.e. an item that is rounded on the top but flat on the bottom?
I think she's just, I'm hoping I'm understanding, like maybe she's talking about a fondant mold or a royal icing flower. That would be okay on a 2D cookie.
Yeah, she said
that's what you're talking about.
She is, I think. She said, I'm concerned with my royal icing embellishments on my 2D entry. She goes, oh, okay, you just answered it. Okay. She goes, minimal 2D size is 12-inch square, correct? Let me check that. because it's been a long week, guys, and nothing is staying in my head. Okay, the entire entry for 2D must fit into a 3 by 3 foot, 91 by 91 centimeter space. The entry can be smaller than this area, but it cannot be larger or any less than 1 foot by 1 foot. So we want it bigger than a foot by foot and smaller than 3 by 3, or up to 3 by 3. Olivia, do we have to use only royal icing for both 2D and 3D, or can we use various icing types like fondant, wafer paper, etc.? Good question.
Use it all.
Yeah, you can use it all, but use it skillfully together. I think a key thing about cookie decorating in general is knowing what media work best for what you're trying to do. Like, sometimes it's not royal icing. I'm doing a lot of stuff now trying to make dimensional shapes with royal icing and curving royal icing. Man, that's tricky, It'd be a heck of a lot easier with fondant or modeling chocolate. But so something like that might be impressive if you do it. But I think we're also impressed by people who know what medium to use for what application. So yes, you can do that. I will say that in 3D, there are certain applications that are harder than others, though, so that you might get more points if you do something that's a little harder. I personally think that dipping a curved cookie in royal icing is a lot harder than covering it with fondant. So I'm going to give more points to people that actually coat their cookies with royal icing. So think about things like that. We judge
but
based.
Also,
go ahead.
Play
Ginny.
to your strengths, because I would rather see you cover it in fondant smoothly than sloppily with royal icing.
Correct. Yeah. But also remember, this competition is also more than anything, guys. We're talking a lot about what to do and what to avoid in order to place or win. A lot of it's about learning. So, and it's a risk-free way to do that, because no one's going to know you entered except me, unless you are a finalist, photos won't be released, etc., unless you're one of our finalists. So, or unless we have your permission to do so. So, it's a great risk-free environment to actually try new stuff. And if it's not perfect, great. That's fine. You've learned something. And that I really want to impress upon people that's probably the most important thing about the competition, especially if you're a beginner approaching the competition. We don't have skill level categories. We never have. We may as the competition gets bigger. I've decided not to have them because when we first started the competition, cookies were so new, particularly 3D cookies, that no one had really done them. So there was no such thing as an advanced 3D cookie decorator. But that's beginning to change. But we've also found in past competition that it's often people who haven't entered before or are new to competing that have won. And again, that's beginning to change. So as the cookie competitions get more established, we'll probably be breaking into skill levels. We don't have them right now. So sometimes beginners will say, hey, I'm not equipped to enter because, everybody else is super fantabulous. I would say, again, back to that learning point, you'll never really compete if you don't start somewhere. So, jumping in, even if you don't win, just to learn, is a really great mindset to have.
Competing is just like when you started baking. You've got to start somewhere. You didn't magically make amazing cookies first time out, although I do see some of you are pretty talented. I didn't make perfect cookies the first time out. It's the journey. And so don't be afraid to enter if you're a beginner, because just the feedback that, we can provide and grow, you'll just grow so much by competing. I think it's important to jump in. Don't be afraid. And like Julia said, if you don't tell anybody when it's all over, it was your entry, nobody's going to know anyway. So it's a safe way to compete, as opposed to real life competitions. You tend to, everybody sees your work there, but here it's pretty safe.
Yeah, that's another unique thing about it being online this year. It's like,
yeah,
you don't have the challenge of getting the entry onto the table, traveling with it, which is huge. If it didn't work out quite the way you wanted, but you want to enter it anyway, no one's going to see it. It's not going to be displayed on the entry table. So Bev has a couple of questions. is hand painting items that are a 3D thing in real life acceptable on a 2D entry? I'm not sure I understand that. Are you saying, like, let's suppose you want to hand paint an owl on a cookie and it's a 3-dimensional thing in real life. Is that okay to paint it on a 2D cookie? If that's the question, I'd say sure. You can replicate anything in real life on a 2D cookie.
Like sometimes you see on Halloween, I just saw one a couple of days ago, the spider, and then you see the shadow under the spider, so it appears like the spider's 3-dimensional. That's perfect.
Yeah, I think that's what she probably.
Totally fine on 2D.
Yeah, that's probably what she means. Also, just as an example, if you guys look at my page today, one of my contributors, Samantha Yakoveta of Aproned Artist, made a spider cookie with a dimensional royal icing transfer. So there's a dimensional piece on top of it. It's royal icing sticking off the cookie. That would fall into the 2D category because the underlying cookie is flat. It's one cookie. In our competition, that would be 2D, not 3D. So that's a good example of that. Bev also says, I can hardly wait for the learning process, first time entrant here. Yes, and I want to talk about that a little bit when we get to that a little bit later in the presentation, because the competition's online. We have a lot of unknowns this year, so this might have to be handled a little bit differently than we've done in the past. So I'm going to be kind of non-committal, but committal at the same time, if that makes sense. Any other questions? Appreciate all your questions, Bev. Anybody else?
Ginny, Bev, thanks for being brave enough to ask the questions.
Yeah, I'm sure other people have them, guys, and it's but there is a 12 cookie minimum for the 2D entries. Okay, let me look again. No, there is not.
3D.
Okay, for 2D cookies, you can enter a single large flat decorated cookie or a collection of flat cookies. Blah, blah, blah. There is no maximum cookie constraint there, but the cookies have to fit into that certain area I mentioned earlier. With 3D cookies, there is a minimum of 12 required, primarily because we don't really think you can do a 3D. You can do a 3D cookie. I've done a 3D cookie with 3 cookies, but the more interesting pieces will involve more cookies. So in the 3D category, we have a minimum of 12 decorated cookies comprising the construction. And again, there's no maximum cookie count, but it has to fit into a defined space. The entire entry must fit into a 2 by 2 by 3 foot tall area. The entry can be smaller than this area, but it can't be larger. Okay. Yeah, just read, print out the rules and have them next to you. That's the easiest thing to do. And again, the rules are there so that everybody's kind of judged to the same set of criteria and feels like they have an equal shot, even if they are coming at the competition from a different experience level. Okay, I'm going to move to the next slide, which is a little bit more involved, and I'm trying to keep my comments open, but they disappear every time I move slides. Okay, so I'm going to talk about, and Ginny's going to chime in here wherever she has something valuable to add, which I'm sure is on every point. I'm going to talk about our judging process, and as I said, we tweak it every year to try to maximize it for fairness and education, and one of the great things about my judges is they've judged a lot. A lot, both internationally and also here in the US, online, in person, on TV, in just about every format. So I feel like they bring the best of every other competition they've seen, and also the worst things they've seen that we can avoid. So we do try to optimize every year. These are the core principles we abide by. We do blind judging, as I mentioned earlier. That means we don't know, judges will not know whose entry is whose. You guys, when you upload, you'll be entering your name and address. Before the judges even see those entries, I'm going to go in and clean all of that out. I'm going to hide it from them so they won't see it. And as long as you haven't put your business card in your photo, we won't know who is who. And again, we do that so that no personal biases can be introduced. Sometimes we'll see somebody's work and it looks like somebody's work. We'll think, hey, that's so-and-so because it's got this sort of technique associated with it because we've judged so many competitions. And sometimes we're right, sometimes we're wrong, but judges don't know until the very, very end. And I think that's a good thing to do, and most competitions do work that way. It's a two-step judging process. Not all competitions work this way. This is somewhat unique to us. We judge as a team, but we do, as I said, have everybody independently score across pre-established criteria every single entry. Every single entry, and sum total the points. Those points will determine a preliminary ranking. We do this so that every judge's voice is equally heard. As I said, I've been on some judging teams where we walk around and judge as a team and discuss as we judge. And sometimes I've just found that sometimes, there's always a more opinionated or a stronger personality in a group, and sometimes the softer personalities don't get as heard. So this is a process to make sure that everybody expresses themselves equally in the judging process. My judges are pretty outspoken as a general rule, so there's not too much risk of any of them not being heard, but it's there as a step in the process. But more importantly, as I said, each judge has a different set of expertise they bring to the table. So one judge might evaluate something really, really high because they particularly appreciate like strong piping skills, whereas, someone who might be more familiar with 3D might say, but hey, I gave them a ton of points for this because that's a really hard thing to do with a 3D cookie. So it's those kinds of discussions when we get together and see the final scoring. Well, if there are differences of opinion in how people scored particular entries, we discuss every single one of them, every single difference of opinion, and we hear the reasons for, and then we may or may not adjust points to reflect differences of opinion we might not have seen ourselves as we went through the judging process. So that there's a big discussion section that follows. At a physical competition, it happens the night of judging, and it's time pressured. Another benefit of this process is that we can spread it out to take as long as we need this time, depending on how many entries we have. So I think it's going to even be a more thoughtful discussion this year. That will determine the overall rankings. So I mentioned point 3 already. You can see the criteria from last year, which will probably be pretty similar this year in the cookie overview, the competition overview post on Cookie Connection. And again, I'll put that link under this post once the video posts permanently to my Facebook page. We talked about rules. We like rules to be followed, not for punitive reasons. I've never disqualified any person in any competition I've judged. I know of course, of other competitions that have disqualified. But in my experience with my competition and others I've judged, I personally have not seen that. In my competition, I prefer to deduct points. I want everybody to be scored. I want everybody to have the benefit of the feedback process and getting, knowing how they did. And if we disqualify somebody, they may not really ever know why. They might know why they were disqualified, but they won't know how well they did on everything else. And we judge across a lot of different criteria. So that's why I prefer point deductions. They are not arbitrary. We will establish them in advance. If somebody puts something inedible in, if somebody violates a copyright, we'll have a standard deduction for that will typically be enough that person wouldn't place, because we don't really want to award something to someone who did not follow rules. That's just, again, not a fair thing. So they're defined and they get applied to every entry the same way. Anything to add on those first 4 points, Ginny? Yeah.
I want to talk about the copyright briefly because I've seen entries that are absolutely amazing, but they are clearly based off of someone else's proprietary art or designs. Bring your own work to the table. If for some reason you're copying a painting, the only way that I think you could be comfortable and us being comfortable with that is if you had written permission from the original artist. Like sometimes you see a big painting and you decide you're going to copy that painting. You would really need to have the permission from that artist in writing and submit that with your pictures.
Now, I'm saying even this year, Ginny, just to avoid that altogether.
Just don't.
Just don't this year, just to simplify our judging process and submission process.
Okay.
So that's not even on the table. So I would say if you're in doubt about whether something is copyrighted, you can ask me, but I'm not going to do that homework for you. So you're going to have to figure that out, and you can search that online. You can contact the artist. Some things are in the public domain, meaning they were published so long ago that they're the copyright's expired and you can copy them. But don't ask me if something's okay, especially if you're not telling me what it is, because I won't. That's part of the process. You need to figure that out. I would say, when in doubt about whether it's copyrighted, don't do it. We judge. One of the key judging criteria is creativity. And, to me, it's not so creative to copy a Mickey Mouse and put it on a cookie, Anybody can do that with a project. Not anybody, but there's skill involved with that. But we're looking for your personal expression, which isn't necessarily, somebody else's, and often isn't. So, So this year, I'm just saying, don't do it, And if you don't know, just come up with an alternative. We had that in a competition in 2019, in my competition when it was judged and filmed for the Food Network. Our second place entrant wanted to do a tribute, I think it was to David Bowie, and had contacted his people to see if she could use album covers and copy them. Because at that time we did allow copyrighted stuff if permissions were provided with the materials. She could never reach them, and so she didn't put the covers in, but she did stuff that was evocative of him in a very abstract way, actually, which she described in her entry notes, how this was related to the entry. And she also acknowledged later that not being able to copy the covers actually liberated her in ways and really pushed her limits. So I think there's the benefit of that that comes with not relying on something that's already out there.
Definitely.
Bev says, any feedback is very helpful and better than none. As you say, that's how we'll learn. Thank you for giving feedback. So let's talk about that last point, feedback. So everyone will get scored regardless. In the past, when we've been at physical competitions, we've written out a form. Once the scores were tallied and finalized, we put each entrant's average score across all the judges on a form and compared it to the average score of everybody that entered that category, so they could see how they stacked up on each criteria. We also provided some feedback in terms of more qualitative feedback, things we really appreciated and things we thought could be improved. And then if people wanted those feedback forms, they just had to find me before the end of the competition and I would hand them out. I did not mail them out. Though if people emailed me later and wanted to get them, I would send them. So this year, with the competition being online, we have a couple of new challenges. We don't know how many people are going to be entering, probably until the last minute. Right now, we're pacing, with more entries than we have in the past. More registrants, I should say, because entries are just coming in. So we're pacing a little faster than last year. I expect that we would have more just because it's easier, for people from all over the world to enter. I just don't know. So before I can commit to giving everybody feedback, I just want to see how many people we have who actually submit entries, and we won't know that until October 15th. So sometime after October 15th, I'm going to be refining the feedback process and kind of giving you guys an update on what that will look like. I would say at a minimum, if people want feedback, I'll have the score sheets so people can email me and I can review them with them. Whether I'll be able to physically email feedback forms to each and every entrant is a question for me right now. I just don't know if I'll have the capacity to do that because I'm, one person administering the competition. So I will have more information on that as we get into it, but I would say I could probably reliably guarantee that if you email me for it, I will find time to get you that form and answer any questions on email. So that would be the minimum expectation. Anything to add there, Ginny?
I don't think so, because it is hard when we don't know how many possible entries we may have. It looks like we're going to have more than we've ever had. So I agree that deciding how we're going to do the feedback is going to have to wait.
Yeah,
so we know how many.
Yeah, and also just in terms, and also back to that schedule I showed early on. That's why I'm a little bit vague about when we're announcing finalists, because all of my judges, I should say, are volunteers. I'm a volunteer. So they're working all of this in and around other high-powered, time-consuming jobs or multiple jobs. I know Ginny works 24/7. So I also need to be mindful of their time. I don't want to pressure them and put unrealistic time constraints on the process either, because I want us to be able to give it our best, most focused attention. So if it takes longer to evaluate the entries this year because we have more, we're gonna take it. So we'll go ahead.
I'm looking forward to the fact that we aren't on a time constraint like at a physical show, because we do have the ability to spend a little more time with each one of them. I think that's great.
Yeah, I know. Hallelujah on that, because we often work well into the night because we have to deliver the outcome the next day at the show. Whereas here we have a little more leeway. Yeah. What was I going to say? So October 15th, entries are due at 5 p.m. Central Time. At that time, I'll know how many entrants we have. My judges meet as a team to review entry criteria and discuss the process, whether we need to adapt it or not, depending on the entries. We do that, I think, on, when was that, Ginny? The 20th or the 21st of October?
Yeah.
Sometime around then. So we're all going to consult on that. It's not going to be my decision. It's going to be a team decision. And so shortly after that, we'll have a better sense of schedule. And I may publish some updated information then, just so you guys know. So that's all I wanted to say on the judging process. Did I miss anything, Ginny?
I don't think so. I think you're pretty spot on with everything.
Others, questions? Hi, Juanita. You probably joined a while ago, but I'm just looking at the question screen right now. I think we've gotten all of Bev's. And, okay, so if there are no questions, I'll keep looking, but I'm going to move forward to talking about our prizes. And again, I mentioned this. I mentioned this because it's kind of an extraordinary number, but I encourage people not to get intimidated by this and think, oh, the stakes are so high, I can't possibly enter. Again, I encourage people to enter just for the sheer learning and fun of it. But we do have 14,000 in prizes. 8,000 of that is cash. The other 6,000 is things like digital gift certificates that people anywhere could redeem. And it'll make us easy to get them to you because we'll just transmit them online. Bev says, I'm finally done with my questions. LOL, I've had a week and my memory is shot. Same here. But hey, questions are good. I love the questions. The more questions, the better. Because I think most people have them, and it's just better to get them addressed up front because you guys are going to be putting a lot of time into these entries. So yeah, it's a lot of awesome money. It gets divided amongst 6 people. We have 3 winners in each category, 2D and 3D. So that's another reason I haven't broken yet into skill level categories, because I just do like having generous prizes for people. Again, a lot of time goes into these pieces, and I like people to feel rewarded by that. But again, we'll be reevaluating the skill level stuff as we move forward, and as the competition ages, more and more people get more and more experienced. In fact, as you register, you'll notice that I collect some information about how long you've been decorating and whether you've won other competitions and so on and so forth. And that's data collected to allow me to gauge how to break this apart next year. So great prizes, and we have a number of great companies to thank for all of that, starting with our gold sponsors. Ginny is one of them with her beautiful pink and black logo on the upper line. BRP Box Shop, Hungry Hippopotamus, another judge, Creative Sugar Art, Japan's Holonaise Association, JSA, myself, Sam's Cookie Company, Shore Cake Supply, Sugar Prism, who is also hosting a first ever sugar art competition in March in Phoenix. You might check that out. Sweet Bite app, who has a great app for organizing cookie tools and products. Sweet Cosmic Colors from South Africa, and You Can Call Me Sweetie, another judge. Many of our judges are giving away awesome classes. Sandy is, others have contributed cash. I will also note that we've got a more international profile of judges this year because we've been online, and I'm pretty psyched about that. There's nothing more fun to me, really, than meeting people across the globe, and I've had an opportunity to meet a lot of these sponsors through this process, which is terrific. Silver sponsors, also to be thanked, Busy Bakers, Chua Cookie, Confection Couture Stencils, who's my stencil partner, CookieCon, who's putting on their second of 2 big cookie shows coming up soon, next week in Dallas, Country Kitchen Sweetheart, Icing Images, Laura Saporiti, one of our judges who's giving away awesome classes as well, Learn to Cake with Susan Trianos, and Sugar Veil, Michelle Hester, the original creator of Edible Lace. We've got a lot of innovators amongst our sponsors as well. So thank you, everyone, gold and silver sponsors. And Ginny, thank you, of course, not only for judging, but for also supporting the competition in that way. I really appreciate it. So let me check questions. Whoops. What happened here? Did something happen to my screen? It did. I had lost a little background image, but that's okay. I know I ended up trashing it. There's a little background image that covers a big image of me. So, and it disappeared. So, because I inadvertently trashed it. So you're going to see me poking out behind the screen.
Oh, I see you there.
I know. I know. That's not supposed to be there. So, hi guys. No questions. So how do I enter? Actually, I'm going to switch to the next screen because I hate seeing 2 views of me. And hopefully I won't. There's this nice little blue background that covers a larger image of me behind everything. So how do I enter? Again, all of this is spelled out pretty clearly on the Cookie Connection site in the competition overview post. The link will be underneath this once we finish up here and it posts. But it is a 2-step process. You register on Eventbrite, which is an event platform. You pay a $15 non-refundable fee. It's $15 USD per category per entry. And that just signals your intent to enter. You may or may not end up not having an entry you want to submit, but that signals your intent to enter. The registration costs help to fund certain aspects of the process, like the platforms and stuff on which you will be submitting entries. All of the sponsor money goes towards prizes, every bit of it. So once you registered, you will automatically get, when you register, an email from Eventbrite, and it has a note from me a little bit lower down. So if it looks like, hey, just a confirmation that you registered, please scroll down and read the note underneath, because it directs you specifically to another page on Eventbrite, which will have links to where you will upload your entries on Cookie Connection. Those links will not be distributed to anyone who has not paid. So you want to make sure you look for that email from Eventbrite. They will not send you an email. The only time you may not get an email is if you typed in your email address incorrectly. So make sure you double and triple check that before you submit your registration. If you don't see the confirmation email, check your junk box, because it may have gone there. But my note will direct you to yet another page on Eventbrite where you can find those links. And if you do miss that email, just return to the registration page on Eventbrite. Link is on Cookie Connection. And you will see a little tab to the right that says Access the Event. If you click on that tab and you're a paid registrant, it will take you to the page that has the links for uploading. If you're not a paid registrant, you won't be able to open the tab. So once you're ready to enter, then things will get uploaded on Cookie Connection. The things to upload are also listed very specifically in 2 downloadable documents on Cookie Connection. So it's photos, it's a video, it's various things basically to allow the judges to see entries as they might if they were looking at it for real. But read that. The document on Cookie Connection corresponds nearly 1-to-1 to the entry fields on the site. I would also encourage you to open up that entry form on the site and just look at it. Get familiarized with it before you start uploading. You'll have one shot to upload, meaning you can make one pass through it. If you miss something, actually the system won't let you upload, so it'll notify you that you've missed a piece and you need to go back and add it. It's pretty self-explanatory. We've had a few entrants already, and they've had no problem with the upload process, so don't let that intimidate you in any way. And let's see. And that's all I had to say today, guys. Ginny, did you have anything to add?
Just one little thing that popped in my mind, and that's don't manipulate your pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Don't use filters and things like that. We want to see your work, not your work tweaked.
Yeah, I think, that I see a lot of stuff on Instagram where things have clearly been digitally enhanced, especially with respect to color saturation and intensity.
Right.
We're not all photo experts, but some stuff's pretty obvious. So we don't we don't want to see that. I don't mind if you make minor exposure adjustments. I know I struggle with getting the lighting right on my photos, so I often will amp up the exposure on something. Right. But we don't want you photoshopping out errors. We'll end up catching them too, because we ask for enough photos in the video that we'll be able to see that kind of stuff. So, not that anyone would do that, though. Of course not. Of course not. Any other questions, guys? We're really looking forward to seeing the entries. That actually should be my closing slide. It's always exciting to see each year people push the envelope, because each year the techniques advance, guys. If I could show you, well, it's similar to our own individual work, right? I'm revamping my website right now, and I'm seeing all these old pictures I did 13 years ago, and I'm like, wow, that was me, So I've evolved. We all evolve also through competing, and the overall state of the competition also changes and elevates. And so that's really exciting to see. It's also really exciting to see new people come on board. I think we have probably a number of new entrants this year who are just taking the leap for the sake of doing it. That's really fun. I just, encouraging growth in the craft is another big objective of mine.
I think my parting words would be a phrase I use all the time, what if? Because a lot of you are saying, what if I fail? What if I don't do a good job? Well, what if you knock it out of the park and you win? Mm-hmm. You won't know unless you try. Mm-hmm. So please try. Mm-hmm. We want to see them. Mm-hmm.
So that's all I have, gang. I want to thank Ginny for being with me. She's been a wonderful guest. She's a wonderful colleague, and we've known each other forever. And as I said, I can't really think of anyone I trust more, except possibly my other 3 judges with your entries. So thank you, Ginny. Everyone,
you're welcome. Thank you.
Bev says, pushing myself one cookie at a time, as we all are. So yeah, that's the attitude. Have a great weekend, everyone. And I hope we get to see you in person. As I will say, I am planning to run this competition in person at That Takes the Cake next year in February, provided the competition runs and provided COVID's in a situation where my judges all feel comfortable coming. So we are going to be probably returning to the normal setup not too long after this competition concludes. So be on the lookout for that. Have a great weekend. I'm going to end the broadcast now, if I can find the button, and I'll talk to you later. And I look
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Okay, doke.